Hey guys, it's Nick from this here. Today's Mortal Kombat 1 discussion video is an interesting one. I'll be talking about the DLC fighters Ermac and Quan Chi, and how I think they were originally planned to be a part of the main roster. There's a few reasons for why I think this, and even some proof, which I'll start off with, as it's the strongest piece of information we have for this case. Mortal Kombat 1's soundtrack got released on vinyl back in April of this year by record company Enjoy the Ride Records. What's so interesting about this is the art when you open the record jacket. It's the roster for the game, but clearly an early build of it. It's no surprise Shang Tsung would be here, since he was released as Day 1 DLC, so NRS would have worked on him alongside the main roster, but for some reason, Ermac is here above him. The icon is different from the Ermac icon we have in-game now, mainly because he's not wearing a mask, just like how he doesn't wear a mask during the story mode. The render seen in this artwork is one that doesn't exist in the finished game. Ermac was the 5th DLC character released, so it wouldn't make sense for NRS to be working on him so early in the game's life cycle, unless he was going to be a part of the main roster, which I think may be the case. Now, there's a bit of proof for Ermac, but what about Quan Chi? Well, they share some traits in common that make me think they were both originally planned for main roster at some point. Every main roster character in the game has a Union of Light and Order of Darkness skin. Quan Chi and Ermac also both have Union of Light and Order of Darkness skins. Ermac's aren't available to use yet, but you see them both in the story mode, so it's a matter of time before they're added to the game like Quan Chi's were. The guest characters don't have any alternate costumes, so they won't be considered in this equation. However, Takeda is the only other Mortal Kombat DLC who so far doesn't have any sign of Union of Light or Order of Darkness skins. Interesting. Compare Takeda's role in the story to Quan Chi and Ermac's. Takeda has a brief cameo in the Multiverse Mayhem at the end of the game, and it's not even our timeline's version of the character because he's killed as quickly as he's introduced. Ermac has an entire arc dedicated to him, with his creation by Quan Chi's hand to King Jared's soul taking over his body. Quan Chi is one of the main villains of the game. They both seem like much more likely candidates for main roster than Takeda, who I think was planned as DLC from the start, and his cameo in the story mode was thrown in as a result of this. Not to mention, you fight bare-bone NPC versions of both Ermac and Quan Chi in the story, but not Takeda. These versions of the characters are different from how they ended up playing in their DLC releases, so I think it's possible that these were early builds of the characters that NRS was working on for the main roster release. My guess is maybe Warner Bros. Advised them to sell these characters as DLC because they're both fan favorites that fans would be more likely to purchase. However, NRS already had mapped out parts in the story where you fight these main roster entries, because all main roster characters fight at some point in the story, so as a result, they filled in these fights with the bare-bone NPC versions of Quan and Ermac. Quan Chi and Ermac are also the only DLC characters to get alternate color palettes as rewards in the Invasions mode. Takeda hasn't gotten any new Invasions colors at the time I'm making this video, which really solidifies this theory more to me that NRS had these color palettes planned for Quan Chi and Ermac since they were originally going to be on the main roster. It's an awfully weird coincidence if not this. I guess if Takeda ever gets Invasions palettes, we'll know for sure. My final point is regarding a statement made by the story director of Mortal Kombat 1 in an interview a few months before the game was released. It's definitely hard. We have 24 characters in the game, and not all of them can have the same amount of screen time, so you're trying to make things pop as much as possible. You might be wondering, why is this quote important? Dominic clearly states 24 characters are in the game, despite MK1 launching with a base roster of 22. Not to mention, he's talking about it being difficult to include every playable character in the story, which, like I mentioned earlier, both Quan Chi and Ermac play a big role in. I think those missing two characters are Quan Chi and Ermac, and it really was a late decision to make them DLC. It's also possible that Dominic was including Shang Tsung in his count, which would make it 23, still leaving the missing 24th character as Ermac, based on the vinyl artwork. This is all solid evidence towards these two fighters being planned as base roster slots, which they definitely deserve to be. It's pretty bad when content is getting scraped out of the main game just to sell it for additional costs later. I guess we'll never know for sure. Ermac being in the roster image from the vinyl soundtrack is the only real solid evidence to this theory we have. The rest is just speculation. What are your thoughts? Do you think any potential DLC characters were scrapped as a result of this choice? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, this has been Nickfamous. See you later.